All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the June 2023 edition of the Cerini Connection. Today, we're going to be talking with Paul Trapani regarding artificial intelligence, which is a extremely hot topic right now, and one that has really come up in the past 3 to 6 months in terms of its relevancy and its use across many different platforms. Paul is from LISTnet, and will be kind of giving us a little background on all of this, and definitely some great information. So that said, I'd love to introduce Paul Trapani from LISTnet to our webinar.
Hi, everyone. First, I'll start a little more info about LISTnet. LISTnet is Long Island Software and Technology Network. We act as a chamber of commerce for the tech industry on Long Island and work to create a strong technology ecosystem. I also have a software company, and I do custom software development. My background, which is interesting and relevant to AI and the new world we're coming into, my original college degree was English and philosophy dual major. And then I came to technology later and got a master's in computer science after that. So now with the world of AI, it's interesting that a lot of skills that were not traditionally tech skills have become much needed in tech.
Great, thanks, Paul. So when we talk about AI, I think the most well-known example, for lack of a better term, the Band-Aid, or what's become the brand name of when people talk about AI, is ChatGPT, which at one point in time, and maybe still is, the fastest growing website in the history of the internet. And obviously you've had now Google and Microsoft launch their versions of it. Do you really think that it is worth all the hype that it's receiving right now?
Yes, the short answer is yes. AI has been around for a very long time. Before this kind of AI, you had what were called rule-based systems, and you had to structure your queries carefully so the system could understand it. But the ability of this system to have natural language processing, that you could talk to it just the way we're talking and ask it a question, and it can answer you and understand what you're saying, is unprecedented in its ability to do so. And that's why I think this hype, and that's why it has been the fastest growing. And we're talking, they got to 1 million users in like 4 or 5 days, which is unbelievable and unprecedented with any sort of tech platform that there's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about ChatGPT, I've already seen it. I'm 37 years old, so I came up in the age of the internet, so to speak, right? Where in 1995, I was still only 10, 11 years old, and it was like a toy where you could go on, various things. And then we learned it became a business tool over time. And I've heard the term, and as a matter of fact, some people I know started a company called digital natives, right? Like my generation is what's called a digital native, where we were so, this technology was so ingrained to us. And now at, this age, at this juncture in my career, I'm seeing a lot of people who are very natural using this natural machine learning, ChatGPT like stuff. How do you think are some great ways that we can utilize and leverage its capabilities? Specifically, what are the appropriate level of prompts that you think people should be thinking about to really get the most out of this software right now?
Right. So the first thing I would encourage everyone to do is just use it and just talk to it. The same people are typing into a chat window now. Go to ChatGPT, create a free account, and just play around a little bit and see what the capabilities are. After you do that for a while, there's plenty of resources out there on the internet that kind of teach you how to do formally prompt engineering, but we don't have to get so fancy. Just teach you how to get better responses. And what people say is, if you give simple prompts, you'll get simple answers. An example of a better prompt would be kind of give it a context. It's a context-based system. So you say, I want you to act like a lawyer that graduated top of your class at Harvard Law School, and you've published many articles and you've been practicing law for 20 years, and I am selling some real estate and I want to get some advice from you. So you kind of create a story for it, and you find that it can get you more targeted answers. Now, a developing field, which is opportunity for people, is to help other people create those prompts, and takes a little bit of learning to do that. But I think a lot of people will be surprised how simply they could just go and ask a general question. A good example would be if you're searching for something on Google, um, how to do something technically, or what's the format for a press release, for example. And it can give you that without a whole lot of internet searching.
Reminds me of when someone says, "Oh, you should just Google it," and
Yeah,
you have to, the kind of like the skill of knowing how to Google something,
right.
what prompts to use and so on and so forth. I imagine it's very much an acquired skill,
Hmm.
just like that. So yeah, I mean, we've started to see it being used in ways that you're talking about like that, and obviously, as I kind of said, Chat GPT is the leader in the clubhouse right now in terms of name recognition, but that definitely does not mean it's the only AI platform out there. What other key AI platforms have you seen start to generate more popularity? And are they built on the same system, or are they built on a slightly different system than Chat GPT, which is kind of the most familiar to everybody, I think, right now?
Yeah, let's start with ChatGPT and talk about one of the limitations. Its training data goes up to 2021. So it doesn't really accurately know about things prior to 2021. Now, interestingly, Microsoft has used parts of ChatGPT. Microsoft is a big investor in the company. The company is OpenAI, and they have that in their Bing search. They're incorporating that into Windows. They're incorporating that into the Microsoft 365, Microsoft Office platform. So you'll get to the point, well, probably within the next year, you'll be typing a Word document. It'll say, looks like you're typing a formal business letter. Do you want some help with that? And it could help do some filling in. Or if you're doing something in Excel, it could help with that as
Well,
well.
didn't the paperclip used to do that back in the early
Yeah,
2000s?
but
I
this,
mean, we all remember Clippy, right?
yeah, this was, this is clippy, but it'll work. So the other major competitor or alternative is Google's Bard, BARD, and that has the advantage, or a so-called advantage, of having more up-to-date data because it's based on the internet. People list pros and cons of each system. Um, in my initial usage, I find ChatGPT to be a little more advanced, but Bard has more access to up-to-date data. So if you wanted to compare, let's say, two laptops you were buying, and what are the pros and cons of each, that's where you might want to use Google's Bard tool. Now, interestingly, ChatGPT also just came out with plugins, and one of the plugins is internet browsing. And so it can now access other information, but it doesn't access its training data. One thing, without going too into the weeds technically, but GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That's a mouthful, but the key part to understand about that, it's pre-trained. You're not continuing to train it. It's trained on a base of knowledge already using a neural network. So what's there is what you get. They do make improvements to the program, but the knowledge set is what the AI engine is already pre-trained on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
From the accountant and greedy capitalist in me, right now, I see that ChatGPT and Bard are both they're not open source, but they're free to use, right?
Right.
Meaning there's been no current charge for these. Where do you see the eventual monetization of these platforms going?
Yeah, that's an interesting issue. And if you think about Google when it first came out, and there weren't ads, and it was great, and then eventually there were a whole bunch of ads. In the history of communications, from radio and even beyond, you have what's called the golden age, before everything is fully monetized and it's just available to all. Even now, I pay for the advanced ChatGPT, and you're limited to 20 queries within a certain number of hours, because these things use immense processing power. So now they're kind of learning from us, but eventually there has to be a way to pay for this. And I don't know what that's going to look like. There is right now, the ChatGPT has a $20 a month model, but again, they're really limiting what you could do with that advanced version. On the other hand, computers are getting more powerful, and there are things out there for anybody that's curious. There's a product called GPT for All, where you could run an engine on your own computer. You need a sufficiently powerful computer. So I see two things happening. One, monetization of these platforms that are now free. So I'd say play with them now, and eventually there'll be value in doing it. And two, we'll be running these on our own machines. I mean, Apple released these M1 and M2 chips, and one of the things about them is they have GPU and CPU cores on the same chip. Again, without getting too technical, but this AI stuff makes use of those GPU cores. So you might see a rise in Apple-based computers, and you might see that kind of technology, be utilized where we'll have our own AI engines running on our machines. I don't know if that's the next year, but that is one of the things I see for the future.
Interesting. Yeah, because right now, again, I can just kind of use ChatGPT whenever I want, and then I'm thinking back to early Google or early Facebook, where the question was always, how is it monetized? Because I'm sure OpenAI has probably been burning through capital like it's going out of style. Having worked with early stage technology companies, right, some in the machine learning space, I've seen them, right, how fast and how many series they need to go through, and I can only right. imagine where it goes there. And now that it's this new hot technology, the monetization probably is starting to the guys like me are starting to ask that question already. So therefore I was curious what your thoughts went on that. In terms of the use, right? So we obviously know, being able to use ChatGPT to ask it questions or provide technical knowledge, or Bard, as you said, to help compare laptops. What are some of the more innovative uses that you have seen of AI besides just the general, what we're thinking about right now, what we're kind of talking about in the real high level? What are, some
we've all heard of the self-driving vehicles, which is amazing. By Tesla, which has kind of made it a little mainstream. That's making use of AI type technology. We all talk to Siri or Alexa, which is also using it. Maybe arguably not as good as ChatGPT, but we're now starting to see where people are going to develop applications outside the chat feature. So one of the downsides of the chat engine is what you're putting up there is not private data. So, for example, let's say somebody wants to do a financial analysis on a balance sheet or profit and loss, for their own company. You have to realize you are effectively uploading that to this other company. Now, sometimes you may not care if you're a public company and your data is public anyway, but those are some of the concerns that are there. We are seeing within LISTnet, I have companies that are developing applications. We actually have an event this Friday, our CIO group, and two companies are going to show how they're using the API, or the way to talk to the AI, and build applications outside of ChatGPT, leveraging that technology.
Have you seen a lot of companies start to pivot towards doing that, where maybe they were founded with one sort of technology goal in mind, and then now with how fast this has grown, they're saying, hey, we need to completely reevaluate our mission and pivot over towards changing what our potential product or market or software may be?
I think it's interesting because every technology conversation, every technology meeting, AI comes up. So even ones that are not directly pivoting are saying, how can we leverage it? How can we use it for our existing things? So there is some pivoting, but I also think this is fairly new. Like, this reached this level in November. So we're not even a year into it. And the other thing that I want people to keep in mind, this is still relatively not mature technology yet. So it's buggy, there's issues. It's like when computers first came out, that they crashed all the time. Now we're used to, our computers don't really crash, knock on wood, but they're stable and then they run well. So this is the beginning of this, and we're going to see some exciting things happen out of it. I have seen very innovative uses. I was at an event last week where they're using AI to put brain chips in people that have had strokes and enable them to move parts of their body again. So there's amazing things that I think are going to come out of this,
But it's just still so new, where it's
very new, very new.
Again, right now it's fun to ask ChatGPT questions or some of these questions, but I think, like you said, we're talking 8 months here of this technology kind of being really viable. And even in the 8 months, if you someone that early adopted and started using this in November when it first came out versus kind of the answers you get to prompts now, you're even seeing improvement relative to all of that. And I think we're still a bit of a ways away from not just a data privacy perspective, but from a API and application perspective of really getting meaningful practical uses for your everyday user to be there. I think this tool can definitely get there at some point in time in the near future, but I think we're still on the early side of that as I think even the tech industry and sector itself figures out how to really leverage these tools as they're coming out there. Would you kind of agree with that?
I would agree, and we also don't know the full capabilities and the full dangers at the moment, because one of the things about this type of AI, it's created using something called a neural network, which kind of mirrors the way a brain works. But what happens is it has an input and it has an output, and when it gets sufficiently large, as these systems are, they don't really know exactly how it's doing what it's doing, if that makes sense. This information, anyone that wants to dive deeper in this is definitely out there to see it. But it's kind of fascinating where if you write a computer program, you know exactly what it's doing. But these LLMs, large language models, they're called, work in a completely different way.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely some risks and some things we'll kind of touch on later when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean those are great points. In terms of businesses and nonprofits, right? We're starting to see them, utilize this. I know that when ChatGPT first came out, a lot of the big finance shops immediately said, "No, absolutely, you're not using this." And then,
Right.
A month, 6 weeks later, they were like, maybe we overreacted a little bit. And then you hear reports about, an analyst who tried to put his entire report through ChatGPT
Right.
and had just completely wrong figures. And, that was the end of that guy's career. But that being said, what kind of industries do you really see being impacted the most as this technology continues to evolve and be adopted by, businesses and nonprofits?
So every office-based industry, technology, accounting, law, public relations, media, advertising, any place that people are generating content, I don't think it's going to replace human content generators, but I think it's going to be a tool to help with that process. Anything that requires analysis, specifically on the financial side, I think analysis is going to be a big thing that it's going to be able to do. Now, interestingly, despite what people think, ChatGPT is lousy at regular math, and you have to get plugins because it's not built for that. It's not like writing a program to calculate something. It's language based, but it is very good at detecting patterns. And people that do financial analysis want to detect patterns, and it can do so without some of the inherent biases that humans may have and come up with something in its own way of determining things. So I think that's an area you're going to see a lot of things happen in. I think coding, creating programs is also another area. There's already a lot happening on that regard already. Again, I still think you are still going to need someone to vet what it comes up with and make sure that it's accurate. Worst thing that somebody could do, whether you're writing a program or you wanted to write a press release or a blog post, is just take the output and just use it as is without reading it and using your human brain to correct it for errors. It's not there. It'll make errors. It won't always, but sometimes it will. You have this concept in AI of hallucinations, and that's where the system creates an imaginary fact. And when it does so, it can back that up with sources that may be real or imaginary, and it can really convince you that that's true. And that is one of the major things. If you go on OpenAI's website and read about ChatGPT, they talk about this concept of hallucinations, and it's a known issue in AI systems.
Kind of like, wishing a fact to be true. If you say it enough times, eventually maybe people take it as accepted fact. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
No, it kind of believes it from its sources, and it kind of tries to back that up. And if you think about the way a computer program works is not the way a human brain works. But if you think about talking to humans, we're wrong all the time, and we have incorrect assumptions. So if it's mimicking more of the way a human behaves, then it's going to do that as well, and not have that kind of correctness or provable correctness that you can have in a program or a spreadsheet or something like that.
Well, I've never been wrong in my life, so I don't know what you're talking about, but I have to take your word on that.
Yeah.
When I think about other industries, like, a couple that you didn't mention, how do you think it's going to impact healthcare? Because obviously healthcare is something that, every one of us, no matter what area we are in, have to kind of deal with, right? We all are human bodies right now, as we're kind of talking about. How do you see this impacting healthcare in particular?
So I think with multiple ways. Diagnosis, doctors are trained to look for symptoms and have to keep a lot of things there. And they go through years and years of medical school to do that. So it'll be able to assist with that. In research, genetics, anything where you have to do this kind of analysis or evaluate multiple things, I think it'll come in extremely handy for that. I also think eventually it'll be able to be an interactive kind of um, initial conversation that someone could have and say, hey, I have this, this, and this system. And where a person would now, they'd have to call someone and they'd say, go to the hospital right away. I think that these systems will be able to do that. Again, this is a little bit in the future where we develop these further and have more the ability to correct for errors. But I see a lot of changes happening in the healthcare space because of this. And we're just talking about chat now, but there's also image-based systems, and that could do image analysis or audio analysis, or so one of the big emerging fields is telemedicine. We don't have the issue as much New York, Long Island, because we do have a good density of doctors. But in areas where you don't, they're having to transmit video to get an expert to help give a diagnosis. So I think this can facilitate that examination of an X-ray or something else. So it's not just going to be words. And the new version of ChatGPT has that as well. They haven't released it, where you can give it an image as your input and it can process that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, this may have been rumor or hearsay, but weren't some of the COVID treatments potentially developed using some of this early stage technology, or at least I believe what they were talking about when they were developing some of these vaccines.
I would imagine so. It's in so many places. I mean, even like I said, ChatGPT, this is like the latest iteration of it, but the technology behind it has been around for a while and people have been using it in various ways. This just brought it directly to the mainstream. And it really, to me, represents like a huge step forward. And I would say the one example I could liken it to is like you had all these cell phones, and then like the iPhone came out, and it was like generations ahead of everything that came before it and influenced everything after. And to me, it's that kind of jump. And there were these things before, but all of a sudden we just leapfrogged a few generations, with that.
Absolutely. In the education space,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest controversies that's emerging, right, is students themselves using this as their own original work, or at least trying to,
Right.
relative to that. Do you see some potential of being able to prevent that in the education space? And what do you think about that? Because I think that's a real concern that definitely has to exist amongst parents and educators right now.
Yeah, so I think the view of education has to change. And, people talk about cheating, but I remember when I was in college, I'm a little older than you, in the 90s, and there was a guy that worked at this bar, the Idol Auto called Coach, and he'd write your paper for $20. So that was the analog chat GPT, if you will. So there's always been the capability of people doing that. But the whole goal should be the idea of students learning. And to me, one of the real potentials of these tools is, imagine a 24/7 dedicated tutor where you're trying to learn coding or you're trying to learn accounting, and you can ask it questions or type in your work and it can correct it. Say, hey, you made a mistake over here. Why don't you do this instead? Or you can say, can you teach me double entry bookkeeping? Can you teach me the Python programming language and create a syllabus for that, and then interactively guide me through each section? And these are things that people have shown and that it can do. So to me, it's going to be a tremendous learning tool to work with traditional learning, but also to enable people to learn things on their own. It's a mistake to me for schools to try to ban it or try to think that students are not going to use it. To your comment earlier about the workplace, I heard from two different sources that one very large financial entity, Chase, told their people not to use it, and another one, Citibank, told their people to embrace it. But again, that's also changing day by day. But it's just interesting seeing both reactions of like, hey, we should not use this thing, or hey, let's really get on top of this and use it. I would say you're not going to stop students from using it in one form or another. So I think the approach has to be, how can it be used to be a tool for them to learn? You
Oh,
know,
I agree. I think education needs to pivot towards teaching students how to use it effectively rather than just trying to treat it as like the, oh my God, no. Because
yeah,
again, when I was first in school, you know, when internet first came out, it was, no, you can't use the internet for research. You have to go
yeah,
to the encyclopedia. You know, if
yeah,
you don't have one, go to the library. Don't ever
mm,
cite the internet. You know, we were taught the internet was evil
yeah,
and was not going to give us any sort of information. You know, I spend more time on Google now than just about anything else, you know, looking up various things as kind of a first step. So I think teaching effective use of this is definitely something that needs to be embraced from an educational level upwards, so that the next generation of, you know, incoming leaders can use this tool effectively, because it's not going to go away, right? When
absolutely
this
not.
is out the box now, you can't unring this bell. Like, this
Hmm.
technology exists, and now we have to find the ways to effectively utilize it going forward, rather than, I think, fear it. Um, in terms of the benefits of AI that you've started to see now, again, we're talking 6 to 8 months here right
Hmm.
now. So probably realized benefits versus hypothetical benefits probably fall into two separate categories. But organizations that are going to embrace AI, what kind of benefits do you see them unlocking?
So I see that they will be able to work more effectively and enhance what they can do. Um, so long as they are using it effectively. And I give an example. If you hired an assistant for your business and you had them write an article, you wouldn't just take that article and just publish it as is. You'd probably take a look at it and make some corrections and vet it. And I see that as well. The AI is an assistant at the moment, and if you just delegate tasks to it and let it do it, then it's not going to be as effective. But if you use it to enhance your productivity, brainstorming tool, or create a rough first draft copy of this, or you know, the teaching aspect of it is amazing, even for the average person. If you want to learn something, you can have it teach you and ask questions about it, or find sources. So I think organizations that use it are going to do very well. Again, with the caveat to be very, very careful, especially with the output it produces, and especially if you're in a critical thing. So an accountant, a lawyer, if you're doing a blog post, maybe you don't care if it's accurate or not. But if you're doing someone's tax return, or you're doing a will or something like that, I would say you'd be wise to have an actual expert vet what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, when this first came out, even now, we've used it as a first stop in some tax research that we've
Hmm.
done. And part of it is just to really vet kind of the information that's coming out to see what it is. And I found it to be what I call reasonably accurate, meaning like, okay, it's kind of got the big
Hmm.
picture, but then there's times where it can veer off into left field, and or I've also seen where ChatGPT will stop itself saying, hey, this is, you know, here's a very, very, you know, high level explanation, but you should definitely be seeking professional advice relative to all of this. So, you know, I've seen those limitations come up, but I'm excited to see how it gets integrated into, you know, research databases and resources that even we use as accountants in the going forward, because it is such a powerful tool that
Hmm.
can, you know, help to streamline things and help to provide information to us, you know, in a much more organized way than maybe we have in the past, rather than having to scour through hours of revenue rulings and whatnot. It's able to kind of give those a little more organized and a little easier. So I'm really excited to see that.
Uh,
You've
one,
touched
one,
on,
one, one thing with that, sorry,
yeah,
um, advice to everyone. if you are just taking the output of it and it's doing your job, that's going to be not enough. Like, you're going to have to be able to do more than what ChatGPT can do on its own. Otherwise, you are replaceable by ChatGPT. So I would say work to become not just what ChatGPT can produce, but become better than that, or take that output and then enhance it. Sorry.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's when I think, what used to have so much value, the value of knowledge, right? It used to kind of be what we as accountants to a degree were selling. Like that's now, and legal, and I'm sure some other professions too. That value of
Yeah.
knowledge, that's going to become less of a barrier to entry. And now
Right.
it's going to be about how you can interpret the knowledge you're given. What kind of solutions can you find to problems? Because ChatGPT can tell you, it can give you fact A, B, and C and explain the fact pattern, but it won't be able to tell you how facts A and B can be combined to come to solution D to a problem. That's still going to be, at least for now, a human item, and equally about how the data is presented and helping people make those decisions and interpret it. So yes, it's going to definitely change knowledge-based professions immensely
Right.
in the next 10 years. And that's why, we at Cerini, and, I think as an industry as a whole, need to really start embracing how this technology can work to our benefit and learning how to use it as a tool rather than a threat that I think some people look at it. Now, that being said, there are definite dangers to this, and you touched a little bit on this before, but what do you think are some of the top things people need to be careful about at this juncture when using various forms of AI?
Yeah. So one is the hallucinations I mentioned before. Two is just taking that output, using it as is. But a real concern, and a growing concern. Congressman Steve Israel published an article where they sent out letters to politicians, some written by constituents, some written by the AI, and they were in a sense indistinguishable for the most part, where they couldn't tell. So people that want to use this for negative purposes will be able to enhance what they're doing. So scammers will become a lot better at it. Now, my hope is that we'll have a lot of people on the good guy side using the technology as well. But imagine, we've had issues where other political entities, other countries have tried to do false information on social media. Now imagine you could magnify that effort and make it indistinguishable from a human using this technology. And those are some of the things that we're going to be facing. But again, I'd say on the optimistic side, the good guys have these tools as well.
What about like data privacy and information security? I mean, that's got to be, we all have cybersecurity as one of our top risks already. And now this is like saying, hi, free open door into my data, so long as you're willing to
So
do
that's why I say,
something
like, you can't, and someone asked in the chat, how can they use their data? Like, if you put your data in ChatGPT, the company OpenAI has rights to your data. It's in the user agreement. So you might want to look at other alternatives or other solutions that are not uploading your data to a public source, for that. And it is very much a concern. And I can tell you another concern, because it is trained on the body of knowledge of the internet, is I was typing some data in there, and I wanted it to I had a list of names from an email, and I wanted to format them into first name, last name, and email. And I just posted in there. I said, can you reorganize this list that I took from an email header? I said, and give me this. And some of them didn't have the people's names, like it was missing last name. I said, oh, you're missing this last name, but I think it's this. So, being in tech, you start to see things and you realize, despite all the cybersecurity laws and all that, a lot of our data is out there already. And things like ChatGPT can make it easy for someone to put together all your data that's already out there on the internet. Whereas before, they'd have to go dig and find that. And maybe they could find my cell phone number, but now maybe they could trick ChatGPT into giving it to them because I posted it one time, one place on the internet,
Yeah. And I think too, to the person asking about how they can use this to help with their data. I think, kind of, we were touching on this a little bit early, that this technology in its current form is 6-8 months old at this point in time. I think all of those are good intentioned items that eventually AI should and will be able to do. But I think we need still just a little more time for the third party developers and, software providers to be able to work with this, the Pauls of the world, so to speak, be able to come up with
Right.
turnkey solutions that organizations can use for this, that address data privacy, data security, and, also putting out what the output that you're looking to have is at that point in time. I think right now we're seeing so much potential of this, but I don't know if we're ready to really unlock that potential for the next 18 to 24 months until we start seeing, I think, other applications that are built off of this or built as, within this to be able to really, provide solutions kind of like I think people are looking for at this point in time
Yeah.
for data organization.
So interesting thing, a little related. I was doing what I was doing with those lists, and then I had a larger one. And these are public emails, nothing secret. And I said, can you clean this? And it was giving me 10 at a time, like in a CSV file format. I said, can you do the whole list? And it said, no, it's too much processing power to do the whole list. But it created a Python program for me that could actually sort the data in the way that I wanted. And again, huge caveat to anyone that's not a programmer. Be very careful if you're going to take a program I created and you don't know what that thing is doing and just running that. I mean, it's, those are the kind of things where I see people could potentially get into trouble, especially as this thing starts to connect to other internet-based services and things like that, which is happening very fast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you think about your, cybersecurity 101 rule, don't click an email with a really random link on it because it has
Yeah.
a executable program in it. Well, now if you're going to ask a software to write you a software, well, if at some point in time one of the bad guys gets, enough points in it, you'd be, think about the access point that you've opened up right there voluntarily, might I add. Right? That's where I think some of the, some of the banned usage of this is coming relative to all of that. We touched on it again too, and just in case you have any other points here, right? AI, it's going to impact employment clearly, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we need to be encouraging employers how to use it for productivity, and how it can replace some low level repetitive functions. If you had a 18-year-old student getting ready to go to college now, knowing this technology is out there, what kind of skills would you encourage them to develop and learn as they're going forward for whatever field they're really looking for?
I would encourage a lot of cross-disciplinary fields. Language, communication, vitally important. Learn, take advantage, especially if you're going to university, of the breadth of scope of courses that they can offer, because it's not the traditional coding. It's just talking to it in human language. So being able to communicate effectively is very important. Being able to understand a little bit about psychology is important. And use it, use it. I would tell people, use it to empower yourself, to teach yourself, play around, see what's there. Just like, searching the internet became a vital tool. This is the vital tool of the future, being able to use these systems effectively.
What kind of infrastructure or organizational changes do you think people need to start thinking about relative to be able to utilize this on a go-forward basis? You were mentioning Apple computers before, which is just never going to happen in, accounting for various reasons. But what kind of changes do you think people need to start at least thinking about? Maybe not making today, but thinking about the future of their IT.
So it's having eventually more powerful computers, all that. But I had an interesting conversation with a friend who happens to be an accountant, not at Cerini, but and he was asking me, I want to talk to you about how I can get my people to use this. And I said, well, why don't you talk to your people? I bet they're using it already, because he had a lot of younger workers, and they were. And that's a thing I think organizations have to realize, just like schools have to realize. Your employees are going to be using this already, and maybe the idea of setting some guidelines or trying to figure that out a little bit. Especially I see among young people, they're less scared of the technology, which can be good and bad, but they are embracing it and they are using it, just as they did with social media and other things.
In terms of the future of LISTnet and AI, kind of where do you see that going? Are you guys thinking about, incorporating more AI-driven events? Like, how do you think this is going to really be, driving your membership and your organizational programming going forward?
Yeah, it's happened already. We've had a couple of AI events that have been successful, but I would say even if it's not an AI event, if it's a tech-focused event, AI inevitably comes up. It's just like when we went from not having the internet to having the internet. It's on that scope, if not larger, where it's just going to drive everything. And we're just at the beginning. But I can tell you for sure, every tech conversation or every major tech meetup, unless it's specifically focused on something else, but even if it is like cybersecurity, they're still they're still talking about AI, and it's still coming into it. I have a feeling that's going to perpetuate to accounting, to law, to other fields as well over the next couple of years.
I think it's in every field now,
Yeah.
to a certain degree, of how you're using AI and what are your plans for it, and that. I just wasn't sure, with LISTnet being, a line leader in software and technology,
Yeah.
if you guys were saying, hey, we need to have more AI focused events, because I feel like we have, a lot of turnout here,
Yeah.
relative to this, and in the time we have, we're only really able to kind of scratch the surface as to what's going on. But I also think right now, scratching the surface is really where your average user should be, right? As in learning how to use it, learning it exists, knowing what it can and can't do, using it as a secondary tool. But that's where we are today in June 13th. I don't know if, June 13th, 2024, 2025, I think the conversation you and I be having would be very, very different.
It'll be interesting to come back a year from now and see. I have a feeling things are going to be very different.
It is, but then you have the other side of this that, you're starting to see the concerns of what AI can become from other stakeholders, right? Where, yesterday was reported that the US wants to rejoin the UN economic, whatever item that is, because they're concerned about AI regulation. And you're continuing to see more and more stories of concern about AI regulation. So at some point too, I wonder if the quote unquote invisible hand of government is going to change the impact of this as well. And that's going to be a very interesting thing to watch over the next 18 to 24 months as well, I think.
That also is happening. And a concern there is who benefits from the regulation. And it was interesting to me that the founder of OpenAI, or the lead person, was asking the government to regulate them. I mean, usually you don't see that. So, even people working on this are concerned, but it becomes a concern of, like if the US regulates it heavily and then China does its own thing, it's still, make no mistake, like the warfare of the future is information warfare. And this is very much a tool for that, among other things as well. So it is important for us to kind of keep going with this while monitoring those dangers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Super insightful. Anybody who would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Paul at listnet.org. We're having an event this Friday for CIOs and technology leaders on using AI for application development. You can go to the LISTnet Facebook page if you're interested in that. And otherwise, check out listnet.org for our future events. I'm sure many of them will be AI based.
Well, we are a proud member of LISTnet and looking forward to definitely working together with you more in the future. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This webinar will be available tomorrow on our website, www.cerenicpa.com, and we will also send a copy email to all of the people who are registered. We thank you very much for joining, and we want you to be on the lookout for our next Cerini Connection in the next few weeks as we, continue to provide you with more information on various different topics. So again, Paul, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining, and I hope everybody has a good afternoon. Thank you.